Hi everybody, I'm Mike, and this is Mike Miller Talks Life. Today's quote is, "Try making your point without making an enemy." I really liked this quote when I came across it some time back. It comes from Isaac Newton long ago in the mid-1600s. Isaac was an astronomer, a physicist, a mathematician, a natural philosopher, and a theologian. And he had this crazy idea that there should be open discussion, and it was important to share one's ideas and opinions without alienating one's hearers. Crazy idea, huh? I think he'd have a hard time in our current society. The social climate we are in now is very alarming. We know we are no longer people with ideas and opinions. We are now enemies because of our different ideas and opinions. I've noticed on Facebook, which I've been spending way too much time looking at during a shelter in place, enemy lines are being drawn based on music choices, the kind of guitar you use, choices of wine, child discipline techniques, your favorite restaurants when we could go out to eat, religion, sports, the kind of mask you wear or don't wear. A lack of agreement has become grounds for considering a person an enemy and reason to attack and insult them. And these issues I mentioned hardly seem like issues worth going to war over. I really miss the days when we had good discussions. Most of what I miss from my college days and seminary days were those great discussions we had. Well, often sitting in a class with a professor that you often didn't totally agree with, but he had a way of presenting material that would challenge you and make you think through your ideas and build a better support system for why you believed what you believed, or to actually change your point of view. And there were great days. I miss those days when debates were exchanges of ideas between people who had done their homework, with a few gotchas comments mixed in just for fun. Now, debates are way different. There's a lot of loud yelling at each other, crushing the other person as you insult their personality, their appearance, their style of dress, their children, on and on and on. And it feels like the goal is not just to have the best ideas and points of view, but to actually hurt the person. There's a skill that I think maybe it's time to dig out and dust off and re-inject into our conversations. It's a 4-letter word, so we might get cut off. I'm not sure, but here goes. The word is tact. T-A-C-T. This is the ability to say something without damaging those who will hear it, and actually saying it in a way that might win them over. Tact is so needed today. There are way too many unnecessary casualties because of its absence. When our thoughts first began, they can be pretty raw. They can be blunt, filled with sharp edges, and they're not ready to go public with. And that's why it's good to live by this little motto: think it, but don't speak it yet. We need to dress some of our thoughts up. We need to take some of the rough edges off and make them more pleasant so that people will actually listen to what we have to say. And that's what tact does for us. Tact has been missing for a long time, and the result is an increase of anger and tension, division, enemy lines being drawn, This situation is seen very clearly in the political world, in spirituality, our beliefs, religious preferences, and socially. And we see a lot of conflict. And conflict isn't bad. Really, conflict is healthy and normal when ideas clash. Out of that can come adjustment and produce healthy relationships and strong beliefs. So the conflict is good, but the kind of conflict that's not good, that we want to avoid, is destructive conflict. That kind of conflict that just brings damage and hurts people and creates enemies. There's a guy long ago named James, and he was the pastor of the first church mentioned in the Bible, New Testament. And James was a very interesting guy because he was the brother of Jesus. One interesting thing about James is he did not believe Jesus was who he said he was. And they grew up together. They were brothers. Jesus was his older brother. And so can you imagine siblings that one of them thinks he's the Messiah and nobody else does? And what a conflict-filled home at times, I bet. Had to be interesting. James became a believer in Jesus, believed that Jesus was who he said he was, after Jesus rose from the dead. I mean, what a way to win an argument. Just come back from the dead. I'm not going to argue with him. James became a believer and then a leader in the early church when it was first getting going. James has this great line on dealing with conflict and anger. And it's just so good. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. Slow to speak is just thinking before you say something. Think it through. Should I say anything at all about this? What's the best way to say it? Or what's the best time to say it? Just sort of slow down. Don't say anything until you get your head clear about it. Quick to listen, though, is a good idea because you want to hear what the people are really saying. And listening is working to understand the person's point and the person themselves. I want to understand you. When we understand, we are patient. It just helps us to become more patient. When I understand your problems and that's why you did what you did, I can be very patient. Often, we become very critical and talk bad about people because we don't really understand why they do what they do. And this happens across the board. So we want to take the time to be slow to speak, quick to listen. Why? Because it will decrease the anger and tension that's causing us to make enemies with people we don't agree with. Well, I have a few little ideas that might help increase your tactfulness and help relax the tension. The first one, remember that the right to have an opinion does not make your opinion right. Pretty simple. We all have the right to our opinions. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of opinions. But we need to keep in mind that opinions are not fact. Opinions are personal expressions of our feelings, our thoughts, and our personal taste. That's it. They're not the way it is. They're the way it is for us. It's what we like. This will help us relax a little bit. It'll take the pressure off of us to make sure everybody believes our opinion. Opinions are not always right. Second is be curious, not judgmental. It's just be a learner. Curious about what they think, what he thinks. and why. That's so important, to be curious, to be a learner. Is there something I can learn from him? I may not agree with his point of view, but what can I learn? When I was in college and seminary, I realized at some point that I was learning more from the people I didn't agree with, because it was pushing me to think through my beliefs. And it was important for me. I learned about being a better public speaker by listening to some of these people that I really didn't agree with their belief systems, but they were really good at speaking in public and being positive and encouraging, and I wanted that. So be curious. How do you do that? Why do you think that way? And don't judge them. When we become judgmental, we're just filling ourselves up with pride. We're elevating ourselves, and we're determining whether something's right or wrong. And that's not our position. Third, always treat others with respect. People are more valuable than my opinions. That, I think, is something to chew on. I believe people are valuable. All people. Some really stretch me, but nonetheless, they're people. And I think they're valuable because I believe that God is our creator. And so then I think if God made it, it has to have value. And I have to respect that. And so that really helps me in my approach on how I'm going to say something. I don't want to be disrespectful. It really makes a difference. I don't have to agree with people. I do have to be respectful. I think it helps, next point, to spice up your point. The Apostle Paul said, in your conversations, when you're talking to people who you don't believe with, is the context. In your conversations, let them be gracious, full of grace, and seasoned with salt. And I think the two takeaway principles are be gracious, which is caring and kind, and be salty. Just a little bit of salt that makes people thirsty to hear what you have to say. Spice it up. But don't get it so spiced up that it's painful and harsh. It'll make a really good difference, and people won't be so put off and annoyed when you make your point. I think the final thing that I think would be really helpful is don't be so afraid and threatened by different points of view. Ideas won't hurt you. Other points of view won't hurt you. Hate and fear will cause damage. You don't have to agree with every opinion or idea. You can be very passionate about yours, and you can passionately disagree with other people. But if you could just accept the fact that other people think differently, and there's a lot of ideas out there, and just relax with that. Be comfortable with what you believe. Live out what you believe, and let others do the same. There are some beliefs, some philosophies that are very dangerous, and those need to be challenged and sorted through and sort of point out the weaknesses in those and let them fall aside. Just don't be afraid of different ideas. Well, try to make your point without making an enemy. That's a tough assignment. But I hope you give it a shot. I hope I've given you a few things just to think about that might take the edge off of at least our Facebook conversations. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. I say it every week, but it really means a lot that you would give me 15 minutes or so of your time. And I hope I'm passing on some things that are helpful. If you like it, I hope you check that or subscribe if you want to get reminded of when I'm up next. And until next week, I hope you have a good week. You have less tension and enjoy your expression of ideas more. See you next Tuesday. Bye.